It was a calm, peaceful night in the San Francisco Bay Area. A typical evening with families gathered at homes, enjoying the holiday season. The usual bustle of traffic was replaced by the distant hum of conversations and laughter coming from homes that lined the calm streets. It was the kind of night where nothing seemed out of the ordinary, a night that promised nothing but peace. But in the quiet town of Benicia, a dark and chilling scene unfolded. On December 20th, 1968, a young couple, David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, set out for a simple evening drive. They were parked at Lake Herman Road, a quiet, secluded spot in the outskirts of the city. They had no idea that the peaceful surroundings would soon become the setting for their untimely deaths. Around 11:05 p.m., a lone car pulled up alongside their vehicle. The silence of the night was broken by the sound of gunshots, loud, deafening cracks that echoed through the otherwise tranquil area. By the time the police arrived, it was too late. The couple was found dead, victims of a cold, senseless act of violence. No signs of a struggle, no forced entry, just two young lives extinguished in an instant. But this wasn't just another random act of violence. It was a deliberate, calculated attack. The killer had a plan, a chilling one. He didn't just leave the scene. He left behind a message, one that would haunt investigators for years. At the crime scene, authorities found no immediate leads, no fingerprints, and no footprints. Just the cold bodies of two victims. The Zodiac Killer had just made his mark, and what was even more unsettling was the fact that he hadn't left a trace. Except for one thing: a letter. The killer would later claim responsibility for the attack and send the authorities a disturbing cryptic message. This would only be the beginning, as this same killer would go on to leave a trail of fear and confusion across the Bay Area, taunting authorities with cryptic letters and threats of more violence. But the Zodiac wasn't finished. There were more murders to come, more victims to claim, and more taunting letters to send. The horror had just begun, and the investigators were left grasping for clues. Who was this killer, and why was he leaving such an eerie, terrifying calling card in his wake? As the investigation into these brutal murders unfolded, they discovered something even more chilling. The killer was watching them. But what they didn't know was that this killer was far from ordinary, and his next move would shake the foundations of law enforcement in ways they couldn't yet comprehend. But who was the Zodiac, and what was his true motive? Was he simply a killer, or did he have a dark obsession? Something far more sinister than anyone could have imagined? The discovery of the brutal murders at Lake Herman Road sent shockwaves through the peaceful town of Benicia. What seemed like a senseless, random act of violence soon took a chilling turn as investigators uncovered a cryptic letter sent to the media by the killer himself. The letter, postmarked in the weeks following the murders, was the first of many disturbing communications that would taunt police and send a message of utter defiance. It began with the chilling phrase, "This is the Zodiac speaking." The killer wasn't just a murderer. He was playing a deadly game with the authorities. The cryptogram, a twisted code within the letter, promised that if the message was not printed, he would kill again, this time in even greater numbers. Inside the letter, the Zodiac Killer claimed responsibility for the murder of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, but that was just the beginning. He described the attack in detail, details that only the killer could know, confirming his involvement. The letter also contained a haunting statement: "I am collecting slaves for the afterlife." This line left investigators baffled, not only because of the killer's obsession with death, but because it offered a glimpse into the twisted mind behind the murders. The Zodiac wasn't simply killing for the thrill. He seemed to believe that these victims were part of some macabre afterlife collection. It was as if he saw himself as a collector, with the ability to claim lives for reasons known only to him. But the Zodiac's taunting didn't stop with letters. He sent multiple cryptograms, puzzles that were meant to be deciphered by the public. The first cipher was a 408-symbol cryptogram, a puzzle that would occupy the minds of investigators and amateur sleuths for years to come. In his letter, the Zodiac boasted that once the cipher was cracked, his true identity would be revealed. It was a direct challenge, daring law enforcement to catch him. But the message was full of deliberate misspellings and strange wording, giving a glimpse into the killer's warped psyche. As cryptologists worked tirelessly to crack the code, the Zodiac kept sending more messages, each one more sinister than the last. The public became captivated by these letters, but behind the mystery was a killer who had already committed multiple murders, leaving only his cryptic words and an eerie symbol, a crosshair, which became his signature. The investigation intensified, and police began to realize they were dealing with someone far more intelligent and calculating than they had initially thought. The Zodiac wasn't just hiding in the shadows. He was actively playing with the media, challenging law enforcement, and setting up new riddles for the world to solve. His next attack would be even more brazen and violent than the last. As investigators scrambled to piece together the puzzle that was the Zodiac Killer, a chilling new attack sent waves of terror through the Bay Area. It was September 27, 1969, and Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, a young couple enjoying a peaceful afternoon at Lake Berryessa, were about to become the Zodiac's next victims. The secluded lake, surrounded by rolling hills and nestled in Napa County, was a popular spot for picnics and relaxation, far removed from the hustle and bustle of city life. The sun was shining, birds chirped in the distance, and the air was warm, filled with the promise of a quiet, carefree day. But all of that changed when the Zodiac appeared, stepping out from behind a tree, wearing an eerie executioner's hood with clip-on sunglasses, and a symbol, a 3x3-inch crosshairs, boldly displayed on his chest. Hartnell and Shepard, initially thinking they were being robbed, were stunned when the man, armed with a .45 caliber handgun, ordered them to get out of their car. But what unfolded next was far more terrifying than either of them could have imagined. The Zodiac forced Hartnell to bind Shepard with pre-cut plastic clothesline before tying him up himself, tightening the ropes so harshly that Hartnell could barely breathe. As he began to untie the couple, the Zodiac revealed his true intentions. He was not just there to rob them. With one swift motion, the Zodiac pulled out a large knife and, without any warning, began to brutally stab both of them. Hartnell was stabbed 6 times, while Shepard suffered 10 wounds. The couple's screams echoed through the isolated area, but they were unable to escape. The Zodiac, cold and methodical, moved with terrifying calm as he completed his horrific act. Afterward, he hiked 500 yards to Knoxville Road, leaving behind a trail of footprints that law enforcement would later analyze. The Zodiac returned to Hartnell's car, where he used a black felt-tip pen to draw the now infamous crosshair symbol on the door, leaving a chilling message for investigators. Vallejo, December 20th, 68 July 4th, 69 September 27-69-6:30 by knife. The very sight of the killer's symbol sent a clear message that this wasn't just about murder. It was a game to him, one that he was winning with each new crime. But the Zodiac wasn't done. As he made his escape, he called the Napa County Sheriff's Department from a payphone. His calm, cold voice sent chills down the dispatcher's spine as he casually confessed to the crime, stating, "I want to report a double murder. If you go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway to the public park, you will find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye." What stood out to police was not just his matter-of-fact tone, but his confidence in knowing they would never catch him. It was as if the Zodiac was daring them to try and stop him. The killer then vanished into the night, leaving a broken couple behind and a mystery that would haunt investigators for years to come. Cecilia Shepard succumbed to her injuries 2 days later, but Brian Hartnell survived. He gave a detailed description of the man he had seen, but it was not enough to create a concrete suspect. The sketch, created from his account, would be shown to witnesses and would eventually become one of the most widely circulated images in the investigation. As the investigation deepened, authorities realized they were dealing with someone far more dangerous and elusive than they had ever anticipated. The Zodiac had become not just a murderer, but a master of manipulation, taunting law enforcement and the media with each new clue he left behind. The Zodiac's brutal crime spree didn't end at Lake Berryessa. 2 weeks after the brutal attack at Lake Berryessa, the Zodiac Killer made his most brazen move yet. It was October 11th, 1969, and Paul Stein, a 29-year-old taxi driver, was working his usual route in San Francisco. The evening was calm, with a slight chill in the air as the city lights flickered in the distance, casting long shadows over the streets. The neighborhood was quiet, with little traffic moving through the streets of Presidio Heights. Stein had just dropped off a fare and was en route to his next pickup when he received a call that would seal his fate. The Zodiac hailed Stein's cab and gave him a destination, Washington and Cherry Streets. But when they arrived at the corner, the killer ordered Stein to drive one more block. This seemingly innocent request would lead to a tragic turn of events. Once they reached the new location, the Zodiac, without warning, pulled out a gun and shot Stein in the head, killing him instantly. The killer then stole Stein's wallet and car keys before calmly wiping down the cab, erasing any trace of his involvement. The Zodiac's cold, methodical nature was evident in every step he took. But what happened next would be even more chilling. Just across the street, 3 teenagers witnessed the entire ordeal. Their eyes widened in horror as they watched the Zodiac, his face illuminated by the streetlight, standing over the lifeless body of Stein. The teenagers immediately called the police, and moments later, officers arrived at the scene. They soon encountered a man walking northward, matching the description provided by the teens. The officers questioned him, but he gave a calm, innocent reply, claiming to have seen a man with a gun. The police, unable to make a connection between the man and the crime, let him go. Little did they know, they had just come face to face with the Zodiac Killer himself. As the officers left the scene, the Zodiac, seemingly confident in his ability to slip away unnoticed, walked into the darkness, vanishing into the night. But the Zodiac wasn't finished yet. In a move that would leave investigators stunned, he made a phone call from a nearby payphone. The voice on the other end was eerily calm as he said, "I want to report a double murder. If you go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway to the public park, you will find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye." It was another taunt, another claim of victory. The Zodiac had just murdered Stein and was already moving on to the next chapter of his twisted game. In the following days, the police released composite sketches based on the descriptions provided by the teenagers who had witnessed the murder. The sketches showed a man of medium build, wearing dark clothes and walking away from the scene. The composite sketch was distributed to the public, but the Zodiac was a ghost, slipping away each time authorities thought they were getting closer. The investigation continued to deepen, but the chilling question remained. Who was this man, and why did he continue to elude capture despite his increasingly reckless behavior? In 1974, the Zodiac sent his final known letter to the San Francisco Chronicle, claiming to have murdered 37 victims. However, this claim could never be corroborated. For years, there were theories that the Zodiac had stopped killing, either due to fear of capture, old age, or perhaps a dwindling obsession. But his messages never stopped coming, albeit with increasing gaps between them. In 1974, he had also written about an insatiable desire to kill, referencing a twisted collection of souls he aimed to gather for his afterlife. A horrifying glimpse into the killer's mind. The last known cryptogram he sent, a 340-character cipher, Z340, remained unsolved for decades. While amateur sleuths and cryptographers tried to crack the code, it became one of the most infamous unsolved ciphers in criminal history. The Zodiac's letters were not just messages. They were a game to him, an assertion of power, a challenge to the authorities. Even after his silence, the letters loomed over the investigation, as if he was still watching, still testing the limits of the detectives trying to unmask him. The unsettling silence that followed the Zodiac's last known communication did little to ease the terror he had instilled in the community. For years, the case remained dormant, officially closed by the San Francisco Police Department in 2004, only to be reopened in 2007. But as time went on, the mystery surrounding the Zodiac Killer continued to captivate the public. A case that had been classified as inactive still haunted detectives and true crime enthusiasts alike. In 2018, after decades of frustration, a major breakthrough occurred when a team of investigators decrypted the Z340 cipher, 51 years after it was originally sent. The message, once thought to reveal the Zodiac's identity, contained only more taunts. In the 2020s, DNA technology and genealogical research began to shed new light on the case, leading to new leads and even more theories. But was the killer still alive? Or had the Zodiac truly slipped into the shadows for good? In the end, the Zodiac Killer left more questions than answers. Who was he? What drove him to commit these heinous crimes? Was he a product of a broken mind? Or was there a darker, more calculated force at work? As time moves forward, the mystery remains, like a ghost haunting the streets of California, never truly letting go. Do you think we'll ever truly discover the Zodiac Killer's identity? What do you think motivated his reign of terror? Join the conversation by leaving your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like button if you found this story chilling, and subscribe for more true crime cases that continue to haunt us.